morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it is the 22nd day of March 2024. And welcome to our show today. I want to bring my guest on right away, the amazing Jonathan Cagle. How are you this morning?
I'm good, Donna. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Jonathan has opened my eyes to his talents that he has, and I've been watching his stuff on Truth Social. So I want to bring this up because you were kicked off of Twitter here, which still got an issue with. I still have a little bit of a grudge match going on against X because I got nuked off at the same time the Flynns did, a few years ago. But I started posting on X again, but I've got a grudge match against him because there's no reason why you should have been kicked off. So here is Jonathan playing piano.
Oh, but now I'm dodging potholes in my sunburned Silverado. Like a heartbroken desperado, made it right back to my roots. Something about the way she kissed me tells me she loved Eastern Tennessee. But all I brought back with me was some sand in my boots.
And there is,
Whoa.
I'm going to stop it there. And there is your Truth Social handle right there at Decent FIJC and on Truth Social. So I just want to tell everybody, please go give Jonathan a follow here because he's fabulous and he is so informed on things that those of us who worked in the Anon world for many years are just really excited to hear everything that he has to say. And just so you know, it is in fact Flannel Friday because I determined it was, and Peppy thinks it's a great thing. So Peppy agrees. So I've got all of these. I've got all these things over here that one of my sons printed. We have a printer, a 3D printer, and so he prints all these things for me because he knows that I think it's kind of cool. So
That's great.
There's the Mount Rushmore upgrade right there with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, Commander-in-Chief, the man, the myth, and the legend. So let's talk about your piano playing in a minute. So you started lessons when you were 5?
Yeah, I started when I was 5, and like any 5-6-year-old, I had ADD and I stuck with it for like a year and thought it was stupid and never was a skill I'd ever want in the future. And so I quit, and then I picked trumpet up in 6th grade, I think. Yeah, and because my cousins were all trumpet players, and so from that progressed, a love of just music in general, and I picked up piano, drums, and guitar from that, and so been playing probably consistently since about 25-30 years, I'd say.
Awesome.
But I took a little bit of a hiatus when I was in Chicago and Chattanooga because I was working, and the lies that we tell ourselves, like, all right, I'm going to put this on the back burner for a little bit and get this thing taken care of and this thing taken care of, and you realize that you miss that part of you when it's not there. You don't feel like your whole person. So
well, it's a great thing, and to be able to noodle around on a keyboard or play songs and such, and I actually, the first one that you sent out, I was telling you this, that I actually listened to about 4 different times because I am that type of an autist kind of a person that I want to listen to it and such, and I'll dig into it. But you do a beautiful job.
Oh, the Coldplay song, Everlove.
Yeah, Coldplay. So that was fun. So where are we going to go with the show today? You're fabulous, and there's so much information, and the whole thing with K2 that you brought up last time. And I think we can probably do a quick summary of what you talked about last time. And if you want to hear what else Jonathan has to say, then go back to the episode on the 14th.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, K2 is basically a private intelligence firm that's founded by Jules Kroll and his son, Jeremy, and originally started as J. Kroll and Associates back in 1972, and since has basically blossomed into, the preeminent private intelligence and investigative agency in the world, with a bunch of recruits primarily being from CIA, GCHQ, or MI6, and Mossad, which, for anybody that's just reasonably paid attention the last few years, that's not necessarily a good thing for us. But we've seen from everything that's happened the last 5 years, like so many of these seemingly or apparently organic uprisings or instances that have happened that have done nothing but serve to, foster the current environment that we're currently living. K2 is one of those organizations, possibly the primary organization, that's behind infiltrating groups, going in, gathering intelligence, coordinating with FBI and Mossad and UK intelligence to basically go after conservatives. And for anybody who's not familiar with K2, they're one of the two firms that Harvey Weinstein hired back when he was first facing his accusations and charges, to go and harass and discredit his witnesses or the victims, even worse. So Black Cube was the other one. And whenever you hear about Black Cube or K2, I mean, it's typically not good. Not the most upstanding characters are involved. K2 was going way back. Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. They helped basically protect the interests of the Bernie Madoff Restitution Trust, as well as Hadassah, which Bernie Madoff was basically romantically involved with the CFO of the Women's Zionist Organization, which is Hadassah at the time. And so whenever there's a situation that you need cleanup or you need, a certain outcome, January 6th, sedition hunters and Capitol hunters, I now know that sedition hunters is K2, and we have confirmation on that. And that's a huge, it's a huge testament to what J6 really was, and they've advertised the fallout as, the threat to democracy, and so many NGOs and nonprofits have sprung up as a result in the wake of the events that transpired on January 6th. And one of those ongoing events is the continued persecution and hunting down of conservatives, basically anybody who was guilty of being right wing in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And they've marketed themselves as this, loosely connected network of sleuths, according to, press headlines and Ryan Riley's book. He literally wrote the book called Sedition Hunters, but they're not loosely connected at all. They are highly connected. They've been operating behind the scenes for corporations and billionaires for decades, and they refer to themselves as the CIA's stalking horse. So when the CIA needs to go and harass somebody or make somebody feel uncomfortable or uneasy and they can't put their finger on it, K2 is one of those organizations, the primary organization, in my opinion, that goes and does that. They also are, by their own admission, again, whenever the FBI feels uncomfortable about getting involved in a situation yet, they'll send in organizations like K2 and Kroll to go in and infiltrate the situation or the group, gather intelligence and evidence, and then bring it to the FBI for them to begin their own investigation and get involved with prosecution. So
that seems like it's the CIA FBI's MO, because you look at the surveillance state and Five Eyes and all of that stuff, where they've gone to public-private partnership, or they'll go across the pond here, across one of the oceans, and use somebody else to spy on or get information that they can have plausible deniability of having anything to do with, but realistically they're behind it. And there's a lot of organizations that have stepped forward to try to support the J6ers, and it looks like a really good thing, just like on the border. But I sat down with some investigators, some local investigators, and a lot of those organizations at the border are nothing more than people trying to make money off of pain. And I do have a problem or a suspicion that that's also going on with J6, because they'll create a problem, then they try to find a way to be the solution to the problem, and that usually involves like the transfer of money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at January 6th and Matthew Graves, one of the primary prosecutors of January 6th defendants, he's out there threatening people now, basically saying if the court reduces sentencings, rightly so, for a number of these January 6th number of these January 6th defendants who were overly sentenced or overly charged, then he's going to go back and add new charges to many of the defendants who haven't seen their cases fully adjudicated yet. And what that's indicative of, and we already knew this, but it's just further evidence that J6 is being used as a cautionary tale for conservative right-wing people who are tired of all the bullcrap going on, to don't think, about, standing up or fighting back. Woe be unto you if you decide that you're gonna, take a patriotic stand. And it's actually having the opposite effect. It's hastening the public's loss of trust, and loss of belief in our judicial system, our law enforcement system, our legal system in general. And it's almost ironic, because it's done nothing but invigorate more people to finally get to that point where they're saying, all right, am I really going to be able to just, live and let live on this? Or is it going to end up at my doorstep eventually as well, unless I do something? And I think most people are come to grips with that finally.
Well, and they're calling them out as the liars they are too. And I mean, I think we have to be that serve it up direct and to the point. And that's what they are. They're liars, they're cheats, they're thieves. They have overstepped. They have usurped their intended purpose. And I'm of the opinion that a lot of these things should just be nullified. We need to go right straight to nullification, because they have broken the public trust, and we need to just be, you're done. You had a chance, just like pedophiles or drug dealers or, people who go out to kill people. They're done. You don't get a second chance, because they knew what they were doing. Yeah,
and everybody's fighting a losing battle, because their venue is in Washington, D.C., which is, you can see by the FBI's own admissions in the FOIA emails. It's a rubber stamp for whatever the uniparty wants. I mean, DC is not part of the United States, as far as culturally or morally or, ethically or ideologically, especially. It's 96 or 97% Democrat, and most of those are foreign owned movers and shakers. And you look at the bill that they're trying to vote on today, that Mike Johnson will probably get recalled for, and it's nothing but a wish list for the puppet masters behind Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and a number of others, and that's a problem. And I think that if the bill, I think it's 1,012 pages, and they reduced the 72-hour minimum window to 24 hours, which was against, the agreement that they had up front with Mike Johnson. If they take it to the floor and it's voted on today, then I think that Gates and a few others will move to vacate the chair, and we'll have a new Speaker of the House, starting in April. But yeah, there's no chance that people can get a fair trial in DC, especially not if you're conservative. And if you're a DNC operative like a Sussman, and all the facts and evidence are overwhelmingly against you, it's nothing to get a rubber stamp acquittal as well. And we'd like to believe that they're still randomizing the judicial selections and the jury pool selections, but they're not. They're controlling that as well. They get the judges that they want. They get the juries most favorable to them, and the venues that they desire, so that they know there's no chance that this person's ever going to get due process. So I think that ultimately how this shakes out, if we are successful, is that you'll see the abolishment of the U.S. District Court in D.C., which is long overdue. It serves no purpose. It shouldn't have its own district court. And if there's a superior court in D.C. that has run its course as well, you'll see the end of that as well. And a lot of these judges will need to be recalled. Amit Mehta, Tim Kelly, I can't think of any of the other ones, but those are the two that really stick out to me as far as just being just egregious in what they've done to J6ers, and it's detestable, and so it's coming to a head. They're hastening their own demise, Donna.
Right. Well, and it's not just the unlawful processes within the judicial system. I think we really need to start calling out our legislature and the legislators who have done nothing. And they've done nothing. And I mean, we're not seeing any process. We're listening to a lot of people that whine and sob, and they don't do anything. But that's the political parties too. They don't do anything other than argue who's going to be the next one in power. That's going to be the new savior of the United States, who will do nothing, just like the people before them.
Yeah, it's become almost comical. Like I can't remember a time in my life where I felt less represented by the representatives that we send to Washington D.C. And if it all goes back to the work that I got started and involved in with election integrity, because if you don't have secure elections, you really don't have any control over what happens in your own country. You don't really have a country at that point. You are a vassal state of whichever interests are involved with stealing your elections. And unfortunately, Donna, our own government is complicit in helping those foreign entities usurp control over our country. And so that's pretty terrifying. But you get the government you deserve, so they say. So maybe we'll be able to do something about these Manchurians that we've sent to Washington D.C. to pretend like they care about us.
Well, it starts with a change of heart in us. If we have representational government, which we kind of do, because there's a lot of really good people out there, but they've got to step forward and do something. And we have to check ourselves on a daily basis that we, in fact, are living up to what we expect them to do. You can't expect the government to be honest and have integrity if we don't have it in ourselves. And that check has to come every day. And I believe that's where we start, with prayer and asking God to help guide us in all things, that we would make good choices and that we would be his ambassadors on this earth to the lost sheep that are here. Because it has to start with us. So I think it's really a crazy time to be alive. It's a good time to be alive if you are, in fact, willing to do the fight rather than willing to rest on your laurels and see how much stuff you can accumulate. But we're here to work and to serve. That's why we're here. And we learn along the way. And by that, we glorify God and show his character on earth. So, yep. So we had a little shift of mindset here. Shouldn't be, what school did I go to? What degree do I have? What are all my accomplishments? It's like the ones that are the least known are probably our proudest moments.
Yeah, people have used the government to enrich themselves instead of being a representative and an advocate for their constituencies, and that's a huge problem. And it goes back to the idea of just do unto others kind of thing, you know, to where if I'm fortunate enough to be selected to be a representative of my community or my, you know, state or my country, the job isn't about me, it's about the people that I represent. Where I think too many of the people that are currently in those roles have flipped that script and decided this is about me and how can I get mine and, you know, cash my checks, and it's led us into the disaster that we're currently seeing right now.
Well, it's like, and here's the difference. So having run for governor, you see the process and you can see the holes in the whole process. And one of it is everybody wants to ask you what your opinion is on everything. And I've said several times, I'm like, well, my opinion really shouldn't matter here. You know, if in that role, we should not have necessarily an opinion, but to listen. And how many times have we had anybody in office ask us, hey, you know, what's your opinion? What would you like to see done? What processes do you disagree with? What, you know, how do you want this government run? It's not about our opinion. And they want to find out people's opinion and then let them go. No, it doesn't work that way. We're supposed to instruct them. And so our mindset on that needs to change too. And there needs to be a way, and I think we can do this because there is some really good technology. Not all technology is bad if it's used the right way, but that starts with the heart of the people and the intention. And we could take that information and put it in something that gathers it, aggregates it, looks at some solutions that will in fact solve those problems that come from we the people. So, you know, I'll get asked things like, you know, what's your opinion on gay marriage? I'm like, right now, why is the government in marriage at all? And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow. But we need to ask these really hard questions. Why is the government involved in any way, shape, in marriage? I don't believe it should be. It's all about a money grab or who gets the advantage for being married or not married or what that status is. It really is all about money and creating more jurisdiction within, or they don't even have jurisdiction, but creating more jobs within it. So why are they involved in it? People could go out and get married. And if you want to do a civil contract on your assets, because that's all it is when it comes to the government, it's a contract to settle assets for them to take when they drag things out, make it worse and such. So it really shouldn't be involved in that, in my opinion. So the question is a moot question because we're programmed to ask these specific questions, which are designed to divide us, instead of what's the solution to the problem. And that's not part of their narrative because they don't want to solve the problem.
Yeah, they definitely have a huge advantage and a huge incentive to address symptoms as opposed to curing disease or curing illness and getting right to the heart of the matter. Because, you know, I think it was Mitch McConnell who said that he raises more money in campaign donations when the Republicans are in a minority. And that's such a terrible mindset and attitude and thing to care about, is like how much you can generate for yourself as opposed to how you can take care of your people. And it shows like a complete bass backwards way and mindset that pervades many, and if not most, of our elected leadership in DC. And it needs to change because our current situation is not tenable. It's a runaway freight train, you know, with no, you know, no good path forward if we don't do something quickly to address it. Because our country, like our border, is wide open. It's being invaded clearly, and all of these people that we don't have chain of custody of, we have no idea where they are. They could be in any city, and we're seeing, you know, every single day it seems like there's a new report of somebody who was, you know, harmed or, you know, killed by an illegal immigrant. And I mean, you start to ask yourself, okay, not only are they not stopping this, they're actively suing to keep it going. And so now this is like act of war type stuff. Like, why would our own government do this? Like, one of the constitutional requirements of the government and the elected leadership and the president of the United States, their responsibilities are to defend the borders of this country. And when they're not only not defending them, but they're actively working to
Breach
undermine them,
them, and
yeah, it's a completely different animal that you're dealing with. And I think people need to wake up quickly, because we are losing our country as we speak. And you know, this November is going to be probably the, you know, most consequential election, I would say, for the direction of the country that we'll have had in my lifetime.
Do you think we're going to have an election? I don't really know. I can honestly say that. And I've heard that from enough people that I don't even know if we're going to have an election. It's so messed up. So I don't know, but we should plan for it and always, always, always vote. There's no excuse not to vote. But it's something people are talking about. So, you know, we're going to throw that out there, because a lot of people, I've heard them say that they don't even know if we're going to have an election.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends and colleagues that are, you know, in that camp. They believe that, you know, there will be some kind of black swan event that keeps us from having an election, or is
and
used
let's
as
talk
an
about
excuse.
that. I want to talk about that, because that's out there. There's trends, there's patterns that we can see out there before things happen, and that I'm hearing black swan event all over the place. And even in the last 2 days, I've seen more activity on talking about a black swan event.
Well, I think that they might certainly try something. I was going to say, I do disagree with my friends and colleagues that are in that camp. I do think that we'll have an election, but on the black swan, like, if hypothesis that justifies them canceling the elections. The problem that they have now is that they've waited too long to do something, or they've gone too hard too fast in the paint, you know, with everything that they've already done, that nobody buys it anymore. If anybody, you know, the moment that we have an EMP, or the grid goes down, or, you know, there's some kind of attack, our government is immediately going to be the primary suspect. And then
Absolutely.
a few foreign governments and private entities are going to be the secondary suspects, because everybody knows who our government is now. Our government is illegitimate, it is anti-American, and it is seeking to create this perpetual American empire, where you have the select group of haves that dictate to the subjects the perpetual, you know, middle class or lower class. They're really trying to completely eradicate the middle class. But yeah, I mean, nobody's buying it anymore. Like, narratives 5 years ago, and this is a crazy Rubicon to cross in just such a short time, but I can remember it like it was yesterday, because it was the first time I began caring about politics, because it ended up at my doorstep and it affected me. 5 years ago, you know, the government, you know, Big Brother tells you something, and you know, it might take a few weeks or even months before you hear any, you know, counter evidence to the contrary, to even begin to question whether or not the government's official position was legitimate. Now it's like within hours. It's not even days. It's within hours. People are seeing something, and Twitter, or X, you know, has been such a huge and key tool in doing things like this. This is why, you know, my suspension has gotten a lot of backlash, and I'm thankful for everybody that's trying to fight to get me back on the platform. But Twitter is the public square now, and media outlets are hours, if not days, behind Twitter as far as getting the facts of a situation as it happens. Being the first to set the narrative, being the first to establish, all right, here's what happened actually, regardless of whatever they try to pass this off as. And that's why platforms like True Social and Twitter, X, and you know, other channels are so intrinsically important is because by the time CNN or MSNBC has, or the White House press secretary has, put together their, statement of facts, people are already tuning them out. They're not even paying attention because they've gone to the public square and gotten the actual information with the receipts and with the evidence that goes into deciding and determining what the reality of a situation is. So that's why I think the black swan thing won't happen, because within, like, everybody's already expecting, like, what have they not tried yet? Okay, they've already tried lasers. Sorry for the normies who are watching, but direct energy weapons are not something that are science fiction. They're not something that are a construct of QAnon. They're something that our government has had the ability, our Department of Defense and Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency has had the ability to engage in for 15 plus years. And we've seen them, like, if you look at the situation in Maui and you're not thinking, okay, why is it that all the houses with blue roofs are burned and everything else is eradicated? Like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
If you didn't question that, well, they've already tried lasers. They've already tried a bioweapon with COVID. They've already tried, like, they're not going to do nuclear war for a couple of reasons. Namely, you can accomplish everything that you want as far as gridlock and the undermining of critical infrastructure without the hundreds of thousands or millions of deaths and the decades, if not centuries, of radiation fallout that you have to contend with for a certain portion of your country for the foreseeable future. It would be a last resort. And I don't think, like, I could see an EMP attack. I don't think that they're going to do that either, because with an EMP, you basically do what's called a pinch. You get all of the electronics, in an entire radius being completely disabled, like you would in a nuclear blast. But that doesn't just apply to things on the ground. That applies to things that are in the air. So you'd have a lot of unexpected and uncontrolled. You wouldn't be able to control the environment, but just because of the plane crashes that you would have. And God knows we couldn't have them crashing a plane on top of one of the haves or the 1%'s houses or properties or something like that, or God forbid one of their planes are affected by it. So I don't think that that's going to happen. I could see, and this is what we've kind of, the people that I work most closely with have agreed on, is I could see a situation where they do basically just they shut down the grid. You get the EMP without the EMP, or it's almost like a selective EMP. They'll shut down the on the ground grid long enough so that they can build their narrative and start saying it was the Russians, or it was the North Koreans, or it was the Chinese, or somebody else other than who it actually was. And nobody's buying it. Everybody has already relegated themselves to the fact that the black swan event is coming, and when it comes, it's going to be our government, and they're going to bullshit us. And so, like, people are already past that. So the government has to think, okay, well, if we do it to a suspecting people, what's going to be, and we shut down their ability to do anything, like, what's that going to do? What's our only option then? Like, you shut down people who know that you did it, like, and you're talking about the only armed populace in the entire world. And again, nobody wants violence, but, like, you're talking about making a very dangerous and an untenable situation for themselves. And if you're looking for an excuse to bring in martial law, like the martial law avenue, I think that window closed 2 years ago because people are too pissed now. People are too awake. And if they feel like the only reason that we still have peace in our country is because most people on the right still have some semblance that the country can be saved and that civil discourse and temperance will win the day. But if you take that away from people that genuinely have something to lose, it's a whole new ball game. And I think they have to know that, or they're dumber than even we thought.
Well, there you go. I'm going to read a few things from the chat here because I've been ignoring the chat a little bit online the last few days just because I forget to take the breaks because I'm so interested in listening. So Charlotte says, Jonathan, send a message to Elon and ask to be back on X. I had to do it 3 times. It took months, was banned for life. I'm still banned on my last account. So I have one on X, which is why I didn't get on for a long time because I still had a grudge match going on with them. But why did you get banned from X? What was it that knocked you out?
The reason that I got banned is because there was a Georgia elections official that basically came out and said in an interview in public that if Georgia removes the voting machines from the elections this close to an election, it's a recipe for civil unrest and potentially violence. And what if you know like the history of the civil unrest things going back to 2020 Summer Love and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all that, like once you understand like the groups that are behind those, the chaos and the organized subsidized terrorism groups that have basically wreaked havoc on businesses and innocent civilians and citizens for the last several years, once you realize who those people are and what the agenda is and how they're tied in, you understand when a threat is being made a threat. And so this person in Georgia, the one Democrat on the Georgia elections board in Fulton County, I think it's Fulton County, was making a threat of violence. And so I was like, fuck that, pardon my French, but our elected leaders need to get past the idea that they're just going to openly threaten citizens. And I think that their boldness and their brazenness is directly proportional to the amount of insulation that they feel between them and their constituents. And so I posted her address on Twitter. She's a public official. She has no reasonable expectation of privacy. But the problem that I have with my suspension for that, and I truly believe that our elected leaders would operate very differently if they knew that the people knew how to find them. And nobody's advocating that somebody, goes over and starts some shit at their house or, with their family, but there needs to be a certain level of deterrence in the back of their mind before they brazenly threaten American citizens at this point with violence.
Well, look at all those employers, though, that have to have the addresses of our employees and such to be able to hold, for whatever reason. But there's a dual set of rules there, and so we have to have addresses, and when you rent property, you have to have you have the addresses, of course, of your tenants, but then you also have to have the forwarding address after they move. So there's all of these requirements that we have to play within the rules, and they've got to be able to be on the same playing field as we are.
Yeah, and the problem that I and most of the people that are familiar with the situation have with my suspension is that it's clearly a selective enforcement of the quote unquote terms of service, because there are people still in the app right now, still on the platform, that do exactly what I did, but even go much further with it than I did and do it on a consistent basis. So there are certain accounts that they're protected that the rules don't apply to, and certain accounts that if you have these views and you don't fit into this category, then the rules doubly apply to you. And so it's garbage, but it is what it is. I'm not creating a new account. I didn't do anything wrong, and I 110% would do it again and will do it again in a heartbeat, because again, our leadership, if we're to believe that they are elected, then they have a responsibility and an obligation to represent their constituency, not treat their constituency like some subjugated proletariat that they can just dictate threats and blackmail and you know, weaponized extortion from the podium from on high. Like, that's not how this works, or it's not how it's going to continue working. And I think that, again, the more insulated a group of leadership feels from its people, the more bold and brazen they become with their actions, and that needs to change.
Well, honestly, what it is, and I'm going to put it into, I like to make things up to make word pictures of what's going on. What they've really done is they've created a digital bunker for these protected individuals, so they can say whatever they want, and they're safe. So they're in a digital bunker. That's what their people are great at. So anyhow, the judges and lawyers block all the facts coming out in cases too, or they change them. I know that there was things changed in the Attorney General's office in the state of Michigan. And the LaFleur versus Piver Supreme Court case, LGBT nowhere in the Republic Constitution form of government. 100% believe World War III and nukes will be used soon. It is beyond the black swan event. Look at borders of New York and other states and counting from lawful offices with a question mark. No leaders, public functionaries, only common nations have leaders. We are a constitutional republic form of government. I'm going to weigh in there on the nuke part of it. I kind of don't think the nukes are as much of a threat, as you said, to your point, because what's a much bigger threat is the fentanyl that can kill us 10 times over. This is not a recreational drug. This is a weaponized form of an assault weapon used to kill people. And our government enabled it, and in fact, I believe brought it in here. And they know how to aerosolize this. So I want you to think about this. If you're in a large group of people, and we've been watching all of the emergency response stuff going on, and they say with the eclipse and the path of totality and such, and they're running right now emergency drills and such. Think about this: in large groups of people, stadiums or whatever else, if they can aerosolize fentanyl in an area like that, about 300 to 400 feet above the ground, maybe a little more than that, you have got a weapon that, especially if it's the enriched stuff with the horse tranquilizer, the trank, no amount of Narcan is going to help you at that point in time. You're going to be dead before you hit the ground. And the fallout ability to clean it up is also there. So they would not have to have the outcomes that they'd have with a nuclear weapon, because they're after our land. That's what they're after, is the land. And they are in the business of killing people at K2. It's not just that. It's the entire government. It was our government brought the Twin Towers down in coordination with Mossad. You don't have to look too far to figure this out. And the intelligence agencies around the globe, the bad guys, the black hats that are working on it. But I still believe the good guys are in control. And so it's not something that I personally am afraid of. It's just we have to be aware of what the things that they've done and what they're capable of, because they are murderers. They are, and this is an organized crime syndicate that's globally. Now, we don't have any problems, for the Anti-Defamation League out there. We don't have any problems with the Jewish people. CCP, we don't have any problems with the Chinese people. We got a big problem with this international, transnational crime syndicate that's going on here that has attacked and killed their own people on every continent, in every country. I don't even know if we have countries anymore. Honestly, we talk about borders. I'm not really sure that even exists. We think it does. But if you've got a global network controlling everything, do we really have a country? At this point, we need to be fighting our way back. We do, because we have the Constitution, okay? And we do have good people here. But my point is that these are philosophical questions that we can ask ourselves and be willing to fight for. Robert says, good work, Jonathan, from Robert on Truth. Been reposting your stuff since last week. Are they subcontractors of the FBI as well? Are they part of the J6 conspiracy?
Did he say, are they part of the J6 conspiracy? It was a little bit.
Are the subcontractors of the FBI, are they subcontractors of the FBI as well? And are they part of the J6 conspiracy?
Absolutely part of J6, 100%. Probably recruited in by either the FBI, the CIA, the DIA, because, they don't want to have their hands dirty in case, the mission or the operation doesn't go well and people identify who the embedded operatives are in the crowd. So they need some layer of plausible deniability. So that's why you would go into the private sector to a group like K2 or Kroll that recruits exclusively almost from CIA, MI6, and Mossad. And these are people that are familiar with infiltrating groups and undermining and gathering intelligence. I mean, that's their MO. And we know from their own admission, I posted the article called The Secret Keeper that was written back in 2009 about Jules Kroll, and the building and the foundation of what K2 integrity is today. And it talks about, they're the group that the FBI will send in when they're not comfortable yet with getting involved to gather intelligence, infiltrate the group, kind of turn it into a entrapment operation. And it's perfectly in line. And since you mentioned September 11th, it's funny because K2, I haven't confirmed this part yet, so I'm still working to confirm this. But K2 is rumored to have been one of the organizations that did security for the World Trade Center towers before 9/11. And then after 9/11, there was a firm by the name of Thatcher and Associates, that was one of the key firms responsible with cleaning up World Trade Center Plaza in the aftermath. And back in 2013, K2 acquired Thatcher Associates. And because you mentioned Mossad, you look at everything that's happened since then, like not just the, invasion of our liberties with the Patriot Act and tearing down the Chinese walls between the FBI and the NSA and the CIA and other intelligence agencies in the Five Eyes so that they can collaborate to spy on each other's citizens. You look at the financial fallout, and this was further emphasized in the wake of 2008 and the housing market crisis. There's a lot of FinCEN and regulators and OFAC and administrators that burst onto the scene in the wake of all these new financial reporting requirements and regulations. And when you look at K2 and Kroll and the FBI agent Stephen D'Antuono, who was the field director for the Washington D.C. field office when J6 happened, and who was the field director for the Detroit field office when the Wetmer Fednapping situation happened, like you start to see the same FinCEN regulators and administrators and OFAC, like foreign asset control and asset seizure and financial reporting. Like these people are the same people that make up K2 and are also the same people where Stephen D'Antuono came from. He came directly from that life. And so you start to say, okay, if we're looking at 9/11, are we seeing the fruits of the fallout and the new infrastructure that was created in the wake of the destruction of the towers, are we seeing those things come home to roost now? And the answer, according to the evidence that I've seen, is absolutely. It's no question at this point. And once the J6 conspiracy is all thoroughly fleshed out, my prediction is that you're going to see people like a Stephen D'Antuono and people like a Corey Lorick, who was a director of elections in Arizona during the 2022 elections, who comes from FBI cyber. You're going to see a very close tie to K2, if not a direct tie. Because I found some things last night, further background on them and who they are. And, you know, they recruit a lot from FBI cyber. Back in 2015, I think they hired the top former FBI cyber guy, Minhja Patel, I think, Minha, I think is his first name. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's something like Min something Patel, and it's 5 letters. But yeah, he was the FBI's top cyber guy, and it was about the same time that Corey Lorick, who conveniently became the director of elections to oversee the Arizona elections in 2022, that got me involved in the first place. It was around the same time that she was there, working in the same division. And, you know, probably a year ago is when I stopped believing in coincidences. Like, nothing is a coincidence when it involves our government at this point, especially key administrative processes and civic processes that affect the shape and the personnel that are involved in our government itself. So, again, I came across this late last night, so I haven't thoroughly fleshed that out. But yeah, the article that I found last night it made it even darker, if you will. K2 became somehow even more insidious in my eyes, based on what I had seen.
There's so much that you can dig into. I mean, like, there's really no end to any of this. We talked last time too about because this is one of those things that people like to dance around, is the involvement of the Zionists, and I'm going to say Zionists and differentiate that from the Jewish people, just like we differentiate between the CCP and the Chinese people and such. I think we could go there. I'm going to read a couple other things. Christopher Wray needs to be prepped on the connection when giving testimony to Congress. K2 working both FBI and CIA. DC is its own separate entity apart from the United States. It's a fact. And then is Eric Comer Dominion K2 from Dominion?
I was wondering if this question was going to come up. That's who asked that? I want to give them a follow or whatever if they're on.
Robert, and he's on Truth, so he's we'll connect you there, and I know Robert pretty well, and good guy. You'll like him.
Well, that's a great question, Robert. So the way I would answer it is, and I'm assuming this is coming from the baseline of that email that we saw from Dominion CEO John Paulus, where he's talking to Goran Obradovic, because the Serbian operatives involved with Serbia Broadband, where Dominion has obviously all of its servers and it's like global corporate headquarters. They had their own operatives infiltrating Michigan's elections network, and they had been caught. And the people who were infiltrating the network had been caught by white hats, and they started freaking out because the white hats didn't just catch them. They identified who these people were, and they started posting their pictures online. And so they were freaking out, losing their shit. And Goran Obradovic says to, John Paulus, the CEO of Dominion, he says, these people are scared. What should they do? And he says, in the interest of security, Mike McGee is handling with K2. And there's so much to that one email that you can glean, but Mike McGee's ties to Vitalent, which also ties in Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors chairman at the time in the 2022 elections, Bill Gates, who's on the board of directors. K2, obviously, as we've mentioned, but copied on the email was dominion@hamiltonps.com. And that's Hamilton Place Strategies. That's where Nancy Pelosi's top staff person and special assistant to Speaker Pelosi, Stacey Kerr, comes from. She's a partner at that firm. And so now you have like we were talking about J6 and everything that's happening and how it's all interconnected. So right there in one email, you've connected J6 infiltration. You've connected the J6 masterminds, who I believe to be McConnell, Schumer, Pelosi, Bowser, D'Antuono, and then obviously the agency apparatus.
The Capitol Police structure, the Capitol Police were definitely part of this. That's kind of been proven too.
Yeah, and Donna Brazil, people remember her, from the DNC leaks and the Seth Rich situation. I mean, she's life partners with Mayor Muriel Bowser. I didn't know that until 2 weeks ago, but that's a huge game changer. You ask Donna Brazil, depending on the day, and she will tell you, yeah, Hillary Clinton stole money from Bernie Sanders that was supposed to be earmarked to be spread around the DNC, when she actually just said, no, I need all of it. And she kept like 99% of the DNC funds. And then when it became politically and financially expedient for her, she changed her story, and it wasn't that bad, especially when the Seth Rich murder happened. But that's a whole other can of worms. But
I love that story though, because it shows. I don't love the fact that he died. Let's put it that way. But I love how blatant and stupid they were in handling this, with people showing up in the middle of the night and at the hospital. There's no sense. I mean, and when you start talking about K2 is basically it's a cleanup, it's an assassination arm. They cover things up. Then we can look further into that and make some assumptions.
You also have a CrowdStrike angle and a Mark Elias angle, as you always do, because CrowdStrike was paid $25,000. Sean Henry, I should say, of CrowdStrike was paid $25,000 from Mark Elias, that I think the day after Seth Rich was murdered. And CrowdStrike is basically like a private version of Cloudflare and Akamai that basically is wholly leftist. It's involved with so many organizations, like namely the Global Cyber Alliance, where you look at it and it's a who's who of the digital anti-conservative arm, and they are everything but America First, everything but, Trump supporters. And it's just a further weaponization of the public-private apparatus operating under the guise of being a private company, but it's like primarily spooks. But in addition to all that, like going back to that email to answer, Robert's question, Serbia broadband, and this is all things that we've uncovered in, the days since you and I spoke last. Serbia broadband was owned by KKR, which KKR was founded by Henry Kravis. He's the primary partner, but you also have General David Petraeus, who we don't really like too much around these parts, intimately involved. And he and KKR used to run weapons for Obama. They were weapons traffickers. And amongst a number of other things that they've done, but KKR also owns Simon & Schuster, who gives book deals to the dutiful J6 witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson as part of the payoff. KKR also owns GoDaddy, alongside Silver Lake and one other private entity. But the long and short of it is they owned Serbia Broadband Network and supposedly sold it to a an entity called, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, called BC Partners, based in the UK, which is probably just a GCHQ hub. So it was kind of like the Fox's Dominion defamation settlement. They let them buy them out or pay them off by just basically moving money from one pocket to the other pocket without it changing ownership. But yeah, KKR is intimately involved with the erosion of our elections. They're also intimately involved with the border invasion and subsidizing illegal immigrants getting prepaid debit cards. If your viewers and your followers are familiar with the migrant situation where Eric Adams and we recently discovered that they were giving $10,000 prepaid debit cards to illegals up in New York City. Yeah, that's the Krolls. That goes back to Jeremy Kroll, actually. He's one of the people responsible for making sure that program, which comes from MoCaFi, which stands for Mobility something Finance. I can't remember what the CA stands for. But it's a private company funded by tax dollars up in New York City. And it's governed by people like Jeremy Kroll and KKR and Silver Lake and Wachtel Rosen and whatever the rest of the name of the law firm that Hunter Biden used to work for is. I mean, it's crazy. The bigger it gets, the smaller it gets. So is Eric Coomer part of that? Well, in all of this fallout, not only did we know that Eric Coomer before Dominion was at Sequoia, but it just so happens that, you know, he was one of the VPs of engineering, if not the top engineer for Smartmatic, even before he ended up at Sequoia. And so with what we found recently regarding ES&S and Seidel and Paragon and Smartmatic, now it becomes not a matter of, is he involved with this or that? It becomes a matter of, are these entities all just basically one and the same? Just distinctions without a difference, operating in congruence with the layer of plausible deniability that, you know, having separate entities grants you. And I think that's what we're seeing. Like the evidence says, yeah, Dominion is Smartmatic, is Seidel, is ES&S, is Hardin or Civic. It's all very similar or identical chassis. A lot of the same crossover and cross-pollination with the developers, the vulnerabilities that have been identified. One of the vulnerabilities we identified was auto-discover backdoors into Dominion through Smartmatic. That was in... I think it was the Michigan report that we ran. But at that time when we found it, we didn't even realize that Smartmatic or Dominion were even intrinsically linked at all. But somehow there's an auto-discover pathway for you to gain backdoor access into Dominion using Smartmatic. Like, what are we really up against here? And whenever you have a fixer like K2, which is intimately involved with K2, you've got to assume that they're all operating in tandem. So does he work for K2? I doubt it.
Probably wouldn't be that obvious.
But K2 works for him, for sure. That's the way that I would probably put that, because if they're hired by Dominion, then they're definitely representing the interests of Eric Coomer and John Paulos and all the executives at Dominion.
Well, good question, Robert. Who did Seth hand off the USB drive? And that's from Clarity Sage.
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Do you know who it is? I don't know the answer to that either, but you know, it's very thankful that he did act. One person can change a whole game that's out there in the and draw it into the light. And yes, we will always remember Seth Rich.
Yeah, and it took a lot of courage for him to do what he did, and I have the utmost respect for him. And I would encourage anybody who has information that is critical to, you know, moving the needle on the Overton window and helping us unwind this entire racket. I would say to you that, you know, platforms like Twitter and X and True Social and other platforms that are similar have created an environment where it's ironically safer to take the information that you have and put it out on the blockchain, on this medium where thousands, if not millions of people can see it. And the feds or the bad guys, they can't control the chain of custody of who has that information now, because once it's out there, now it's a piece of potential evidence that can be subpoenaed if things progress to where now you get to hit Elon Musk with a, you know, injunction to retain or a subpoena for all metadata regarding this person's posts that can then be recaptured or reconstructed, even if your account gets completely nuked. It's there forever. It's on the immutable blockchain. And by doing that, if I have information that nobody else has and it's invaluable to, you know, the lives of people who are bad guys, and they don't want that information getting out, well, as long as I'm the only one that has it, all they have to do is nix me and then their problem is solved. But if I take the information that I have like it's hot potato and I just say, here, you guys all deal with it too, I'm not going to be the only one that knows this, then it's actually a safer proposition for you, because you reduce the incentive and the relative value that you have to that information itself. And you create a big microscope to where if anything happens to you, then people are going to know, okay, well, that's just going to lend credence to what you just disseminated on the platform. So I would say that, like, Seth Rich was a pioneer. I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean, he's
Trailblazer. He was kind of a trailblazer in making sure that the truth got in someone's hands. He didn't just walk away from it. He actually put stuff out there and said, this is what happened. And I'm not willing to be a part of it to protect this entity, this political party entity that I am a part of. He held that entity accountable and in getting the information out, amongst other things.
Yeah, and he put himself in harm's way to do that. And I would say that for other people out there, like the people like Julian Assange and Ed Snowden and Seth Rich, they put themselves in harm's way. They whistle blew before it was, you know, socially acceptable or a safe thing to do, or there were mediums that allowed them the ability to disseminate information in such a widely distributed manner and reduce the risks that they take to themselves. So they still knew all of those things going in and understood that this is too important and I'm not going to compromise myself, or I'm not going to participate in this, and I'm going to make sure that as many people as possible can know what's really going on. And for that, they are all owed, in my opinion, an unpayable debt of gratitude. And I would encourage anybody who's there today thinking like, well, it's too dangerous for me. No. It's not too dangerous. Like, they had it more dangerous than any of us will ever have to deal with. We have the
because we already are woken up to a certain degree. So there's millions and millions of us out there who are willing to stand with people who actually put the truth out. And as you said, the more of us that wake up and stand together, it's an unstoppable force. When America wakes up and we stand together, not as Republicans which the Republican Party is criminal, not as Democrats, that's already proven to be criminal, but as Americans who own this country and have a contract with the government to constrain it and accomplish services. Charlotte said she believes that it's Julian Assange, and Clarity Sage says Roger Stone knows.
That's interesting. I feel like I should know, and I did know at one point, but yeah, I haven't. Who was that he gave it to? Man, it's in Donna Brazil's universe, so it's like I feel like I should know, but sorry for not having the answer offhand. I will find out, and I'll make mention of it later today.
And where do we find you? We find you here. Hang on a minute. We'll put it up there. There you go. Truth Social. And there's how you find Jonathan right there is his address at Decent, DECENTFIJC on Truth Social. So there you go. Yeah, that would be good to put that out there because, you know, we all should have all these facts. We all should know and take the time to get educated on our world around us. And the mainstream, the fake stream news isn't the choice right there because they're just throwing out a narrative, and it's not a good one. It's not an honest one, and they've all been compromised. And some of the influencers are compromised too. We have to be careful who we follow and test things out to see if people are for real or not.
Yeah, the influencers aspect of it is incredibly deceptive, and it's far worse than what we would have anticipated. But a good way to determine whether or not somebody is being genuine or if they have an agenda is you have to find beacons. You have to identify the people that you know are operatives, and then the easiest way to, and many people have put information out about which ones are operatives, but the quickest way to find out, all right, who is also an operative that might be a little bit harder to find information on? Well, find those beacons and identify everybody who is operating and parroting in lockstep with whatever narratives the beacons are, you know, parroting. So if within an hour or 2 hours of the beacon posting this or making a comment about this, you see, you know, a dozen or more other parrots dutifully following suit, and all of a sudden they just decided randomly, organically even, to make a comment about the thing that the beacon is talking about. And when you do that, it's a little bit scary because the net gets even larger. Like the people that you didn't expect, you're like, wait. Let me go back and check both of their feeds real quick to see like how consistent this is, or if it's a one-off.
I look at too, and that's brilliant. I also look at too in how many people are trying to continue to make money off of this corrupt system by taking advantage of people's fear or trying to push a narrative. Are they making money? Have they found multiple paths to make money off of this? Like, you know, the Patriots will come PAY Patriots that are trying to pay themselves on it, because there's a whole industry of people behind that, who are influencers that are making tremendous amounts of money. When somebody is doing things for free, I tend to listen to them because they've got nothing to gain by getting out there, right?
I have nothing against. Let me be clear about this, and I agree with everything that you just said. I have nothing against the laborer being worthy of their wages and people doing genuine, honest work and taking action to seek restitution that our country so desperately needs. Like, if you do a damn good job, you should be paid a damn good wage for something based on its relative value and the importance that it has to society and in the open marketplace. The problem that I have are the people that take whatever information that they have, and it's not about utilizing it to take action. It's putting it into some kind of book format or a movie or a documentary thing that
selling gold. There's a bunch of them out there selling gold, like that Phil Godlewski. It's like, people should dig into these people's pasts a little bit and look into them and what are they really doing. The guy has made just a tremendous amount of money, and I've posted his real estate holdings. And you should, if he's taking money and making those kind of margins on selling spot gold and such, you should be asking a lot of questions about that. Besides, he made me mad. He pissed me off because he stole my video that I took of General Flynn and then posed like it was him there, and that General Flynn was giving him a shout out. I have a big problem with that because he disrespected General Flynn, and he owes him an apology. And I'm probably not going to get off the subject until he apologizes publicly to General Flynn and some of the other stuff that's gone on out there. You need to read the text messages he set out and really get in behind this to see what he's actually pushing. There's a lot of information there. And yes, everybody is, even a clock is right twice a day, right? And so, but that doesn't mean that these are good people to follow.
Yeah, like I said, there's so many people with an angle right now that, you wonder if our favorite large platform accounts or personalities or talking heads, really are on our side, or if they have an agenda or an angle that it might not be that they are actively against us or talking about, things that we disagree with. It might be as simple as they are constrained into, you're only allowed to talk about the truth in these boundaries. And when the most important parts for the whole picture of the truth actually exist in these boundaries. So there's a lot of gatekeepers. There's a lot of, narrative hoarders and corrallers, if you will, of who is the approved narrative establisher on the right, who is the approved arbiter of all of the facts of a situation, and it's all by design. So we talk about controlled opposition a lot because they agree with us on surface level issues, but they intentionally avoid drilling down to get to the heart of the matter, like we talked about at the beginning of the show. They are focused solely on addressing symptoms as opposed to finding and establishing and implementing the cure, because the money comes in treating the symptoms while leaving the underlying illness, which is your money maker, intact. And that's a huge problem. And I already believe the media to be the overt enemy of the people. And so I expect, just off of that thought process, I expect that obviously my opponents or my enemies are going to be over here, but on my own, quote unquote, on my own side, I'm going to expect that there's going to be people that are designed to either slow me down or misdirect me or not show me the entire picture or not tell me the entire truth because they don't make money in the cure. It's like the healthcare industry. And I come from the healthcare industry. So this is something that it's made me rethink my entire approach, not just to things that I was taught in school, not just the relationships that I have, but the people that I look to for guidance and the sources that I use to establish or arbitrate what actual reality is and what is objective fact. And then as opposed to what's, someone with an agenda larger than I can see, their subjectively identified acceptable set of facts. And that's the fight that more so than in any time in history that the American people and really people across the world have to deal with. We are being subjected to the most intricate, nonstop, perpetual psyops operations designed to demoralize you, misinform you, anger you, and put you in a state of hopelessness. And I feel so bad because like it becomes possible to detach yourself from the psyop once you realize it's a psyop. But most people don't still realize that. Like, I still have to tell my parents, like, why do you have the channel on that? Like, why do you have the TV on that channel? Like, why are you watching news from like The View? Like, how are you even? I don't know. It's like most normies are still asleep and they don't realize that everything that is being told to them and every construct that they see is designed to serve the interests of the bad guys and keep you in a state of disillusionment, fear, and depression and demoralization. And it's worse than, in my opinion, it's ever been, because it has to be. The technology's too good to, like, you can't just have a news anchor get up there and say, yeah, January 6th was the fault of the Saudis and the Afghans. And then everybody just uniformly accepts it. No, like, people have more access to information now than they've ever had. So to counteract that, the psychological operations being waged against us have to be more complex and more intensive and more sweeping than they've ever been in history. So again, I empathize with people around the world because they're the victims of the worst mass scale MK Ultra program that the world has ever seen.
True that. I think, and you can see the craziness that has really been inserted into people through the putting them in situations where they're isolated. That's what a predator does. They isolate their prey and drive them to where they can have total domination over. And people are so much like horses. It's kind of like, if you understand horses, you understand people. That when our emotions are engaged, it's so easy to manipulate people when their emotions are negative, because they're trying to get away from the fear or the risk or the threat out there. And that's unfortunate. So I always tell people too, if your emotions are engaged over something, you are not in control. And you're going to make a bad decision. That's the difference between, say, horses and mules. That's why they use mules in the Grand Canyon. A mule will, if they see a threat, they stop, they look, and they listen. They don't just jump on and react to something that is in front of them. Where a horse, they see a chipmunk, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get eaten, and they'll jump right off the cliff without even engaging. One brain cell won't be firing. And that's the way people are in general. So that's another thing that we really need to watch, is that if we're afraid, or if our emotions are engaged, they just got you.
And that's so true. And one of the reasons why I had to be more careful about which Twitter spaces that I was going on and how often I was visiting those Twitter spaces, because of what you just said. Like, so much is designed to demoralize you or disillusion you, and a lot of people, like, we don't have to wait until somebody's program on Rumble or on InfoWars comes on before we have the opportunity to directly engage with people on the platforms, especially one like Twitter and X, because of Twitter Spaces. This gives you firsthand access in real time to these people that pervade narratives. And probably, I would say, between August and October last year, I noticed I would go into these same 3 or 4 spaces. I gotten to know the people that hosted them and were co-hosts pretty well, and felt like, okay, I'm among friendlies, and each space had its own purpose that it served. Like, I would come and talk in this space to discuss the COVID bullcrap, and I would come in this space to talk about election integrity, and I would come into this space to just deprogram and get away from all of that and just shoot the shit and have leisure, discourse. And I was noticing over a period of 2 or 3 months that a few of the spaces that I frequented, I would always start or enter the space with one frame of mind, and I would leave the space with a completely different, like, not opinion, but like feeling or emotional state, if you will. I would notice that I would consistently get worked up. It would always be polarizing. There would always be someone or multiple someones in the spaces that would trigger me, if you will, and trigger from a standpoint of when you pour, and now that I know what these things are, it's easy to look back in retrospect and say, how didn't I see it? But like triggering from a standpoint of, okay, these people know what I do. They know that I actively like kill myself every single day pouring over this information to help rectify these situations and these issues that are facing our elections and the corruption in our government. How are they being so cavalier with knowing that I'm in the space now, immediately giving a microphone to somebody who is speaking bullshit to the masses right in front of me, knowing that I do this every day? It's not only is it a level of disrespect, in my opinion, but it's like targeted. It becomes
It's manipulation is what it is.
Yeah, it's obvious that
Absolutely.
there's an agenda. And it made me mad once I realized it, and I had to take time away from spaces because I realized that I was going and I was getting mad for no reason, because like it's amazing when you hear somebody saying things that you know to be objectively false or incorrect, and they're saying it from a position of authority, and they have a ton of followers, and the space might have 300 or 400 people in the space, either actively speaking or just listening, and you realize the urgency and how dire the situation that our country is facing, and you know that for our country to be saved, 20% are gonna be with us, 10% are not gonna change no matter what. But you're trying to move the needle with that 70% in the bell curve, the people that it could go either way. And so you don't want, and you actually loathe people that come in and spew blatant disinformation, especially on topics that are so incredibly paramount to understanding for the salvation of our country. And I had to, like, my mindset was like, yeah, I'm not going to let you just get away. Like, we'll agree to disagree. No, we fucking won't. You're wrong. I'm correct. I have the fucking receipts. Pardon my French. But this moment is too important, and the information is too paramount for our country. So how about you go screw yourself? Like, that's, and I had to be careful. I had to be careful and be cognizant, because there are people in those spaces that are operatives, just the same way that our favorite talking heads and largest platform, conserva bros are, likely operatives. There are people who are operatives just to be in spaces. Like, I saw something yesterday, Donna. You won't believe this. Buddy sent a recording to me of someone who I consider a friend and a colleague, was a co-host. I don't think they were a co-host. They were one of the 6 or 7 speakers. All right. And they were talking about something that is objectively true. And, going back to like Zionists or whatever, they were talking about this company, Ericsson, which we know is a problem. It has so much to do with our telecoms and our cyber infrastructure and controlling the, 911 emergency call outs, including on 9/11. But he just mentioned like things that we know to be provably true, like objective facts about Ericsson. He said 2 things, nothing to do with Zionism, nothing to do with any religion or ethnic, or cultural centric topic. He was just talking about Erickson, and he said two things, and the co-host said, "I hope you die." And I'm like, and the problem that I had was I knew the host, and I know the host is a Mossad asset. And so I'm assuming Mossad's pretty intelligent, and they, for the most part, and they probably aren't just co-hosting with people who actively want to undermine Mossad's agenda. I mean, their literal mission statement is, by way of deception, thou shalt make war. Like, that's their whole mantra, is deception operations, in influencing and informational deception are probably the chief things that they do when they're not, helping to fly planes into buildings or assassinating presidents or whatever. But like, that's
we digress,
but I digress. But
yes.
that's their MO. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this person still has an active Twitter account. They still have subscribers, which I never got to have. I don't get to have a Twitter account either. And I'm guessing they share ad revenue too. And they're literally wishing death on people in spaces. And I posted the address of a public official who openly threatened citizens. And I'm going on a month and a half suspended. And people keep asking me, like, dude, why haven't you created another account yet? I'm like, because I'm never going to. Like, it's the principle that matters. And if it means that I am never back on Twitter or X ever again, I'm 100% prepared for that. But I can guarantee you my information that I put on that platform hasn't been spoken for yet. It hasn't seen, it hasn't even begun to sing yet. And even if they evaporate my account like they did my previous one too, I think we had talked about this on our first time together, is that we both have vaporized prior accounts. Even if they do that to my current account, the information is still being adjudicated. And I feel comfortable that if I never get my account back, I feel like I put enough information with the time that I had out on the platform for us to get the ball rolling on resolution that is necessary for us to save the country. And so for that, I have no reservations. And I also have no reservations about helping constituents fight back, because they hate when they can't blackmail you or extort you or cancel you, which they did to me in 2021. And so they basically expect people to, just punch the clock and not make waves because you've got a livelihood and a family and blah, 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 all that, and obligations. And that's the MO that they've operated under. And so when you realize that your obligation for my situation, not having a family, I want those things one day, but for the time being, I'm serving the purpose that I'm supposed to be serving exactly. And not only am I serving it for myself, I'm serving it for all of the people out there that want to say the same things that I'm saying, but they know that other people, other humans, especially kids, depend on them. And so they truly are bound by their love and their responsibilities to people that they care about. And so I have no reservations in, like I said, fighting for what I believe in, but also fighting to speak on behalf of them as well. And that includes the, reprogramming of political, assholes who think that they're just going to dictate to the proletariat whatever they want. This is fucking America. Okay? And it's way beyond time for the people who represent it to remember who the American people are, how resilient they are, and how they not only have the right to overthrow a tyrannical government, they have the obligation and responsibility according to our framers. So I would just say that if I never get my account back, I don't have anything I left out on the field. You know, I don't have any bullets left in the gun that I should have shot that I didn't shoot. So it's the principle. I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm not going to create another account. I'm going to either get my account back or I'm not going to have an account.
Well, it's a waste of time if anyone is going to censor you for what you're saying. And so, you know, why would you put the time into it if they just keep knocking you out? And I know people who have created multiple accounts and they'll reincarnate in the digital space over and over again and put a tremendous amount of work in it to have it blown away. And I got to say, I hope Elon restores your account, my old account. I would love to see that again, just because I don't regret what I wrote either. I had I had several names I wrote under. And when I ran for governor, I had people tell me, you know, you probably should get rid of this information online because it's not going to be favorable. And I'm like, I'm not going to start hiding things now. And I didn't take anything down. And every once in a while I'll revisit it again on the things that, because I was following Myanmar and the child trafficking in Myanmar, crossing borders and that sort of thing. Did a deep dig on Whitmer, and as well as the guy that's in charge of Blue Cross and Blue Shield and his wife and the trust they set up and all of this stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, but we can't hide from it. We've got to just stand firm and go forward. Don't back down. I mean, say you're sorry if you made a mistake, but if you're right, there's no reason to back down. There's no reason to run. You need to get out there and just get louder, say it loud, and shove it in their faces.
Yeah, I have an extra incentive also because I know that two of the people behind my banning are IDF soldiers. And that's what blows my mind and makes me question Elon Musk and the people that still just, and I was one of, and in some ways continue to be one of his bigger advocates, because I truly do think that what he's done for Twitter for the most part has been one of the most meaningful moves for the First Amendment in American history. But why do you then go and burn up all of the goodwill that you've built up with the people by going and hiring IDF soldiers and special forces to run your Twitter safety and trust and content department? And
that's disturbing.
Yeah, and I mean we've got the receipts on it. So it's like, not only is it the principle of it, but it's also like genuinely the people that I'm fighting against are who were responsible for taking me down. So if it means I have to be a cautionary tale or a fucking martyr or whatever, then so be it. But you bet your ass I'm not letting an IDF piece of shit make me create another account and beg and try to hide and get back on the platform. Not gonna happen.
Now you just got to move on and create your own and make them obsolete.
Yeah.
That's the MO of Brandenburg News Network, because that's what I did when I got kicked off of YouTube and Facebook and everything. I'm like, fine, I'm just going to replace YouTube and we'll do our own video platform here and give people a chance to have a voice who've been censored, because that's important. You know, you don't quit when somebody hits you. You figure out a better way to do it and give them a run for their money. Put a boot right up their ass and keep walking. You know, I mean, that's really what has to happen. We don't turn and tail and run. We run right into the fire and address the problem. You don't cover it up. You hit it head on. And that's something that they've really tried to teach us not to do by making us afraid. There is a couple more comments. It's like Robert says, it is, let's see. I said you can go, oh, he was wondering why people weren't commenting there. We're on about let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 different venues for delivery on this besides BrandenburgNewsNetwork.com, which is the most reliable out there, quite honestly. Odyssey went down the other day and we were still up, so there you go. Anyhow, BlackRock begins asset tokenization with launch of digital liquidity fund. And it's odd how some that know how COVID vaccine was garbage now won't believe our elections are fixed. Good friends, even. That's true. I mean, you got to look at the whole system as a whole and realize that everything has been infiltrated, which is why I feel strongly about coming on here and talking about Mossad, talking about CIA, talking about these infiltrated and basically, you know, the Anti-Defamation League can shove it, because they can just shove it. They can shove it. They can't hide under these labels that they've been teaching us to trust, because that's what they're doing. It's a manipulation. You should be able to trust, and I'm a Christian. You should be able to question anything that's under any religious organization. There should be no protected status for anyone. It's either we should be able to look at, is it evil or is it good? Nobody gets a pass on this. I don't care if you're female or male. And I had a discussion with somebody about this last night, and they were saying, you know, why is it that they put so many women into these positions, women and minorities? Because people are real slow, you know, hands off, can't question her because she's a woman, and they feel sorry for that person. No, as a woman who's not confused, I do know the difference, and, you know, never been confused. Not one day in my life aren't confused. Dogs not confused, cats not confused, chickens aren't confused, horses aren't confused. There's no confusion here, right? That if somebody's a woman, you and they're in a position, you've got to question them. If there's a problem, and hold them accountable. Same thing. If they're Christian, same thing. Muslim, ooh, there's a hot topic for you. We need to be able to question them. And if they present themselves as a Jew, we need to be able to question them, because there's so many people that are not Jewish that have infiltrated that religion. They were given a choice. There was a point in history, if you study history a little bit, that they were given a choice, because the people that are parading as that, they were flat out Satanists. They weren't Jewish, and they were told to pick a religion, because I believe it was in the area of the Black Sea, and they were given a choice. You have to choose a religion, and sacrificing babies and doing all of this satanic sacrifice ain't cutting it here. They held them accountable, and so they had a choice. You can be Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. Pick one. They picked Jewish, and they infiltrated. And this is a hard thing. I mean, you know, save Israel for last. I mean, we've heard that statement for a long time, because people weren't ready for the truth. And I'm going to bring this up because Robert put this in here, that in fact, Tucker's father was CIA newsman. Makes me wonder about Tucker. Why was he at the World Summit a month ago or so? I don't know. I don't have a question for that, but it's a great question, and we should be asking it. But we have to be asking all these questions. Why are these people there? I don't care what title they've given themselves or who they've associated with or who they say they associate, because I don't believe one word of their bullshit. And so, and then he also goes on and says, our Christian churches were propagandized in the 1800s to view this Jewish state, not the Jewish people, as a friend and should work together. Well, the Christian church has been infiltrated. I mean, look at what's sitting down there in Houston right now. Brother Copeland down there. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm going to tell you what, but you listen to the change of the Christian narrative. It doesn't even remotely, and I mean remotely, look like what Jesus taught or who Jesus was. It doesn't even remotely. You get into this prosperity doctrine, it's a bunch of crap. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hold God accountable, because if I do this, then he has to give me prosperity. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to do a thing. He's not bound by time, your expectations, my expectations, our comfort, or anything like that. Guess what? He made the rules, and it is, in fact, his sandbox, and we don't tell him anything. He is God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. He's good all the time, and we are his children, and you do not talk back to dad or give him the conditions of your involvement or what you're going to do. It's nonsense. And there's been so much, you know, and now we've got, and I talk about this a lot, Gentile Jesus with a lamb sitting on his leg. Okay. And that right there is a problem, because it shut the entire Christian church down to shut up, go along, and get along. We have to forgive them all. Hell no, we don't have to forgive anybody for anything, because if they broke the law and they're evil, they don't get protected status. And I don't care if you're a Jew, a Muslim, or Christian, or whatever you are out there. I don't care. There's either good or evil. And every one of us needs to be more concerned with cleaning out our house than protecting the people that have walked right in to steal the castle from underneath us. And I feel really strongly. So the Anti-Defamation League can shove it right up their behind, and I don't give a rip what they say, because them, Mossad working together with the CIA and such, they created Hamas. They created Hezbollah. They created this Palestinian nonsense. You look at the whole nonsense on October 7th, they killed their own people, allegedly. But I don't believe that they're their own people. They kill whoever they want to kill and use it and then pass the buck and say it's somebody else's fault. No, they moved that event on October 7th to a different location 48 hours beforehand. Why is that? We need to ask questions, because they could set it up and kill their own people. It's just same thing with 9/11. Who did it? Those buildings were, after Silverstein bought it, they were being rigged with explosives, and we've got the receipts on that one too, to see the fuses and the pictures they took in the windows and all of this. It's not. It is nonsense. It's bull crap, and we've got to get away from feeling sorry for the Native Americans. Okay, I'm sorry it happened to them, but they've been infiltrated. Okay. And they're the ones that are doing the damage to their own people. Okay, the black population, African American. Look at the infiltration there. Look at the infiltration and all of these things that we trust, that's designed to shut us up so that we don't call it out for what it is. It's evil. They're breaking the law, and they are willing to kill their own people, which brings me back to another point you brought up that I didn't know before. We're going to throw this out here, because part of the 3 witches in the state of Michigan, Dana Nessel and Benson. Remind us again, Jonathan, and I'm just going to throw this out there to be kind of a little bit of a smart ass, because we both know the answer to this, of the ties to what religion of 2 of the 3 witches.
So,
and
Dana,
where does it lead to murder? I'm going to throw it out here. Where does this lead to murder? Potentially.
Well, gosh. So Dana Nessel's former campaign staffer in 2022 is Samantha Woll. She was stabbed to death outside her home, just steps from her front door. I think that was back in either August or September. Dana Nessel is obviously the embattled attorney general, who's, initially been one of the staunchest defenders of there was no fraud. And then she, we and others unearthed some things that made that, narrative untenable. And so she had to concede, well, there were 8,000 to 10,000 fraudulent registrations. And then as time has gone by, the narrative has continued to collapse, and people have gotten way too close. And you have Jocelyn Benson over here, who comes from the SPLC, which is one of those organizations that's right in league with the ADL and the ACLU as far as these controlled chaos and terrorism organizations, and they're right there in bed with Antifa as well. And so for all of your viewers, American Iron Front is an entity that you need to become familiar with, because it includes the ACLU, the SPLC, the ADL, and Antifa. Jocelyn Benson comes from that world. We have SPLC people that were caught, like SPLC attorneys, that were caught in Atlanta attacking Atlanta PD at their training facility posed as Antifa. So we know they're in league together. We know that the SPLC has a stated purpose of anti-white dilution of European predominantly white nations, and they're bragging about it. They're not keeping it a secret to themselves. They got caught saying this on video. And so you you know the tree by the fruit it bears, but like for the ADL, I mean they're only hastening their demise because they are being even more and more cavalier and overt in their weaponization of this protected class status that they've enjoyed for so long. And for anybody who understands like how the ADL came about and what year it came about, 1913, same year we got the Federal Reserve and the FBI. Even though I think the FBI wasn't officially ratified until like 1919 or 1918, but if we could just do away with everything that happened in 1913, that'd be great. But Leo Frank, and basically a Jewish man, part of, he was the president of B'nai B'rith in Atlanta, and murdered a 13-year-old girl and raped her as part of their second Passover, which I can't remember the word for their second Passover, but it happened on April 26, 1913, I believe. And so he was lynched as a result, and he tried to blame it on the illiterate black guy that worked at the pencil factory doing like janitorial services. And everybody knew that he had done it, and he tried to pawn it off on another minority. And so he was lynched by the KKK. The KKK actually like heard testimony from the African American man. And when you look at the history of the case, it's clear that he did it. He was convicted, or I should say, he was found guilty on all charges levied against him by the grand jury, of which, of the, I think, 12 people on the grand jury, 7 were Jewish. And I'm like, yeah, so there's clearly like these, if they're willing to say that like, yeah, this person clearly did this, then it gives more credence to the fact. And then 82 years later, he was pardoned. And so the ADL has now used that as a jumping off point to say this man was wrongly convicted or wrongly, put to death or what have you. The ADL was born out of Chicago, a group of Chicago attorneys that basically got together and decided to, defend the honor of Leo Frank, and anybody who besmirched his name was now an enemy of the state. And they very quickly got embedded with our FBI. Every FBI agent that is hired today works directly with the ADL, if not for the ADL. And that's a disaster in its own right, because clearly the ADL now is openly making statements about, Nick Fuentes complimenting Candace Owens in her conversation with, the 2 rabbis that she spoken with, Shmuley, and the other one's name escapes me, but they frame it as Holocaust denier and known white supremacist Nick Fuentes, which, whether you like Nick Fuentes or hate him, like, the framing is everything, and it's antithetical to like the rest of the tweet, because he's supposedly this big time white supremacist, but he's complimentary and supporting Candace Owens, who is not a white person. And it's in your face irony that is antithetical to whatever narrative they're trying to maintain. And it's waking people up quickly whenever they say, and the wholesale usage of white supremacists for people that aren't white is going to be the ADL's undoing, because people are awake to the protected class weaponization status now.
The Marxist class warfare, and this is it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, and going back to they were given a choice way back in the day. So that goes back to Constantinople, and they were given the choice between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they chose Judaism because there were some tenets in the Talmudic Jewish belief system and orthodoxy that lined up with what these Satanists like doing, and we're
Yeah, like
already
you
doing.
can sleep with a 3-year-old girl and it's like nothing like poking her in the eye. If anybody reads that and thinks that this is okay, it's not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But you're also right in the fact that they've co-opted the religion of good, genuine, good people who are practicing and trying to do what they can to please God. And
Right.
they're
There's a
using
difference.
they're using and leveraging the sufferings of the genuinely good people and hiding behind them, wearing them as a mask to insulate themselves from criticism and accountability for their heinous misdeeds. Jonathan Greenblatt is one of the chief among them. And one of my life's goals is to destroy him. And the reason for that is there are some crimes that it's like should be universally not a partisan issue. It should be universally like, we've got to work together to stop this. And the child sex crimes and trafficking issue is something that is paramount to me, because I'm a firm believer that a society protects its most vulnerable, or you don't have a society. And if we aren't going to protect our kids, then what does that say about us? Like, as men, not to, go men versus women on this, but like, I was raised in the Christian church to believe that men have an obligation to not just their family spiritually, but to, like, as husbands, as fathers, as to be leaders and be willing to stand up and protect the people that they care about the most. And so, call me old fashioned, but that's just like biologically built within us.
Well,
And
it's a beautiful thing. And it's like, as a unconfused woman, I'm like, bring on the toxic masculinity, whatever they want to call it, because, men are such a beautiful example of God's protection. And if it works the way it's supposed to work, it's absolutely fantastic. I've got a CPL and everybody asks me, you should be carrying all the time. And I look at my husband going, I got this guy, and he's just waiting to protect his family. And he wouldn't even miss a clip. It'd be that quick. The decision would be made quickly, decisively, and there would be no mistakes made in it. Okay. And I really think that this is important. And it's amazing. And I'm going to go back to horses again. Horses exemplify human structure in a herd. Stallions have only two purposes, okay? And that's one to make little horses, and the other one is to protect the herd. And when you ride horses, it's an amazing experience. I can get on a mare, and she's going to argue, and she's going to kind of, well, why do I have to do this? They want a reason all the time. A gelding is like, okay, let's go for a walk. Don't really want it. That's a non-producing male. All right, whatever. Let's just whatever you want to do. Stallion, you get on a stallion, and they're about 20 times the horse that either one of those are, just in strength and in resolve. And you can have something jump out at you, and I don't care if it's what it is. That stallion is going to plant and puff himself big, and he's like, do I kick your ass here, or do I kick it 20 feet? But guaranteed, I'm going to kick your ass. And it's a whole different thing, and it's built in our biology. And it's a beautiful thing. We are not supposed to be. We're created equal, right? But we are not all the same. And I think that that's the beautiful way that God created the world, for us to be like a puzzle. And we help complete each other, because we're not all good at everything. There's nobody that's good at everything. We all have things that make us unique. And that's what you need to do. If you're a banana and you see an apple and you really want to be an apple, you're never going to be an apple, okay? It's just the way it is. You can want all that you want, but it ain't going to happen. But you can be the best banana or the best apple in the way that God created you, and just shine in what you do best. And that's okay. We don't have to be the best. And it's okay to say, I suck at this, or I suck at that. I suck at a lot of things, guaranteed. All of us do. And it's okay to say that and let other people shine and push them in the front and say, this person is extraordinary. I think you're extraordinary. I love the fact that you can connect all of these things and all of the amount of research you put into it. And that's a mindset that Americans have to change. We have got to stop competing with each other and start working together. And if somebody's got the best idea, we're going with that and give them the credit. And then
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Important, it's important for all of us. And I think everybody out there should give Jonathan a like and a share and a join his channel type thing, so that, and then pass his stuff on as the digital warriors that we are, the digital soldiers. Pass his information on and give him the credit. He's done a lot of work, and he's got a brain that can process it better than probably, I'd like to see what your IQ is. I bet it's incredibly high. And because of how much information you can process in this area that you have done so much research, it's incredible. But anyway, let's keep going with the Dana Nessel thing, because she's got me a little perturbed right now. And I think that little miss, if you went and you looked at a pedigree for a job, because that's what they do, they look at people's backgrounds. And so let's see, she's a lesbian, she's Jewish, boom, put her in and she's an attorney. She's got all of the qualifications to set her up in a position.
Do you mind if I take a quick break real fast? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. And then let's both of us take a break. And go ahead and take a break. I'll put something else up there from your channel.
I'll be right back.
The channel, and then we'll keep going on this. So I'm going to see if I can find more of Jonathan's truths here. Let's see if it lets me in. As I think this is a good direction to go in. If we have somebody that's perhaps not necessarily, let's see, I got to join here to go into this. That's okay. Let's see if I can find it another way. This is what you get with real-time punt, as you will. Let's see if I can bring this one up. Oh yeah, there's ADL's indictment of Candace Owens, white supremacist and Holocaust denier. Nick Fuentes is praising Candace Owens' vitriolic anti-Semitism. It's hardly surprising, but it does set off alarm bells. Oh no, she's a bigot now. When bigoted people come together to push for anti-Semitic agenda, it adds fuel to the fire of hate. We don't hate any people that are Jews. We hate their government as much as we hate ours. So, and we're going to call it out. You got to call it out, not back down of it. I hope they call me out on it. It gives me a reason to punch back again, because I'm not real happy with this whole thing. Let's see what else Jonathan has there. His sources for Media Matters. Oh, this is when he comes back. This is going to be great. Like David Barak, the one that were involved in, let's just look at this Comet Pizza. And that sort of thing, that will be a good one to go down. When he comes back, I'll even throw that one on. And then one of the greatest presidents of all time. One day after I am long gone, you will remember me and say, we should have stopped the nuclear program of Israel, abolished the Federal Reserve, and kicked all secret societies, occultists, usurpers, and Zionists out of our wonderful country, to keep it that way. But it is never too late. Just remember that. President John F. Kennedy. Ooh, I like that one. That's a good one to put out there. So you see, Jonathan puts all this good stuff out there that we should be looking into. Let's keep punching, okay? Former FBI Cyber Division CTO profited in CIO Journal. Sounds like somebody else that we might want to look into in Michigan to see who these people really are. That would be Check the Vote, Fani and Eric Vetter, or Tim Vetter, who we were talking about this yesterday, who in fact grabbed the stuff which Election Integrity Force paid for and put it out there in a for-profit company. I'd like to have some questions answered there. And I'd like to know if Fani, if he's an American citizen or if he is not an American citizen. I think that hit it up. And also, I believe that we need to reinforce this again, that I believe that it's Christina Cramo's administration within the MIGOP, who really doesn't want to talk about a lot of this stuff, was paying Check the Vote, I believe, $2,500 a month So go figure that. I'm not really sure how this ends. Maybe I'm not very smart about this, but we need to ask some questions. So let's go here. Former FBI Cyber Division CTO joins consulting firm K2 to expand security practice. There's Milan Patel. I've been going through your stuff here and making some connections with such. I brought up this of Candace Owens. And then I'm gonna go to this one. Media Matters, David Brock. Who go figure that? And Comet Ping Pong and other stuff there that they don't want us to mention. And John Podesta, world-class child trafficker, sex abuser who's sitting there, and all the connections to Hillary Clinton, the KKK, and Hillary Clinton. There's so many connections there. It's amazing. And then this
James Alefantis and the Rothschilds.
You bet. They're all connected. And so it's like poster. It's like you could put a poster up there and connect all of these people. It's relatively small, but they're all connected. And so I am going to, in fact, I didn't put it up on the screen so you could see it. I was actually going through your posts here. There you go. We've got Candace over there. And then we have Media Matters. Oh, there's a big surprise for us.
Yeah, this is my second time posting about that tweet, and I am amazed that I didn't notice that the Media Matters was the source that they had quoted, because that, like, I heard you saying, while I was out. I'm gonna let
you talk for a minute, and I'm gonna take a real quick break, but keep talking. I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, Media Matters ties in David Brock, ties in, Hillary Clinton, who was one of their first advisors. It ties in John Podesta, who they rented, I think, their first office space from. And then obviously it ties in Pizzagate and Ping Pong Pizza and James Alefantis and the Rothschilds. But it also ties in like the RICO case that was filed against them. Media Matters, American Bridge 21st Century, David Brock, and David Brock and his cronies are intrinsically involved with a lot of things that are going on today. Michael Teeter is Ray Epps' attorney. Michael Teeter is part of the 65 project that David Brock had started. He's also got Facts First USA, but they're open about their stated purpose of going after the right and punishing the right and holding the right accountable. And the only, like, if you're a conservative or somebody who is truly just like, I want just normalcy. I want, people to get along, and I want to feel like I have an opportunity in this country. Like, for those people, like, to see an entity just come out of the gates like so aggressively against quote unquote the right, when we've been the ones who've been right about every fucking thing and you've been wrong about everything since COVID made landfall in the United States. You've been wrong on everything. So why now are you coming out as like a hold the right accountable? Like, it's so urgent. Like, we didn't start this fight. You started it.
End it. I can guarantee you we're going to end it.
For sure. And you would only do that if you had something to hide. You would only openly come out as the aggressor against the people that you've trampled on for the last 5 years and been wrong the whole time. Uniformly wrong on every major issue, like the origins and creation of COVID, the Black Lives Matter, like natural immunity, summer of love, like you can protest, but you can't go to a college football game, mantra, lockdowns, 6
but
feet.
But Natalie can, and she can go and get drunk and pass out at an MSU game and hang out with, I don't know, Ron Weiser, who gave like $150 million to U of M and such. This is all a big, and he's on the Atlantic Council. He was running the Republican Party. They kicked him out. We got Karamo in, and Karamo's, administration was contributing to other things that they shouldn't have. And now we've got Hoekstra, who signed the Patriot Act, not once but twice.
Yeah, and the whole like election integrity issues, like telling 2020 was the safest and most secure election in history. No, it fucking wasn't, CISA. No, it wasn't Chris Krebs. No, it wasn't Alex Stamos. No, it wasn't Jen Easterly, Katie Hobbs, Gretchen Whitmer, all these people that came out and openly stated this. It was either Whitmer or Benson. So if I attributed what Benson did to Gretchen Whitmer, my sincerest apologies to Gretchen.
They're in the same cult, so I'm not worried about you saying one or the other because they went lockstep together in their little Marxist way.
Yeah, but like the whole narrative, I mean, it was born out of the CIA. The Howard College of Investigative Journalism built it. Arizona State University, Walter Cronkite School of Journalism over there. Arizona State is run by the chief spook of the CIA, Michael Crow, and Scripps University, or I'm sorry, Scripps Institute. They basically funded two HCIJ, Howard College of Investigative Journalism, at two universities around the country, Arizona State and Maryland. And these are basically spook proletariat, spook Praetorian Guard media propaganda mouthpiece factories. And all they do is they pervade the narratives that the agency apparatus wants and try to suppress or lie or conceal the facts about what's really going on. And VoteBeat churns out a lot of these people, or I'm sorry, they hire a lot of these people that are churned out by these two spook journalism. I say journalism very loosely, institutions. But Michael Crow, for those who don't know, chairman of the CIA's venture capital fund, InQTel, which funds EcoHealth Alliance, which funds Metabiota, which funds bioweapons research, which gets $120 million a year from the FBI, NSA, and CIA, which invites IARPA and DARPA personnel and DIA personnel to become basically like a second tenant at Arizona State University's campus. It's insane because HCIJ at Arizona State University is who crafted the "there is no widespread fraud in elections with mail-in voting" narrative before November 3rd of 2020. They put that out in late October. They already seeded the narrative, and we've seen this from the CIA in many countless iterations throughout history. This is how they do something. They trickle the narrative out, take the temperature of the room, and then once they get a little bit of traction, they all go lockstep. And sure as shit, the 2020 was the safest and most secure election in U.S. history. That's CIA narrative that then was dutifully, pervaded by Chris Krebs and CISA, was utterly bullshit, and was repeated by Katie Hobbs and Whitmer or Benson and a number of other secretaries of state around the country who we now know aren't probably duly elected either. They are there to be placeholders for the people that are wanting to take over the world. And most of them are Zionists, whether they're Jews themselves or they are Christians supporting.
As
Correct. But, we talk about this idea of, the chosen people. The very reason Jesus came to earth is because it allowed the opportunity of salvation and access to God to all men. Okay. It leveled the playing field for everybody. And then it made it one pathway to where nobody comes to the Father.
You got a friend there.
Yeah. Nobody comes to the Father but by me. And that's pretty cut and dry. And that Mossad actually recruits Christians and or quote unquote evangelicals and Catholics and some Protestant denominations because of a lack of understanding of what the New Testament scripture actually teaches us, and they use those people, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to foster this continued expansion of the Zionist empire. And even people within the Jewish faction that call themselves Zionists that truly don't grasp what the term is being used to mean are still taking a more traditionalist view of the definition, that, you know, Zionism typically being the right of Israel as a state to exist and have its own self-determination, which I have no problems whatsoever with that. What Zionism is being weaponized to really mean is the Zionist empire infiltrates global governments around the world and executes the agendas and the objectives of those in government within Israel and enriching themselves along the way. That's why you have, you know, the ADL feels brazen enough to get on and say a black woman is a white supremacist, or it's why AIPAC has the stones to get on Twitter and say, yeah, supporting Israel is good policy. 100% of AIPAC's, you know, supported candidates won their elections. Yeah, it's like,
yeah, just trust us. We know better. We're telling you the truth, right? Run.
It's like you're like, I feel bad for the good people of Israel, because
Me too.
their government is doing them no favors, and all these NGOs and private organizations are doing them no favors. They are being the biggest anti-Semites on the planet. They are turning the world against Jews almost indiscriminately, which is, again, I feel terrible because it's not all of them. It's the faction within the group that has this genocidal, like we're better than everybody mindset, that, you know, what we want matters, and we have the ability and we're allowed to deceive and lie and manipulate and do whatever is necessary to gain advantage and levers of power and organizations. Like, that faction is ruining globally everything for the good people within the Jewish faith, and many of whom I've fought side by side with, and I'll still fight side by side with 10 times out of 10, because they're some of the most patriotic and fearless and courageous and righteous people that I've ever come across and ever known. And it's just a matter of me, like, getting them to be like, all right, we got to talk about that Jesus thing now, you know, because that's the only thing that's missing, you know. But like, these are my brothers and sisters, you know. So it's like, I feel terrible for them, because the ADL and HIAS and Media Matters and all of these organizations are ruining Judaism and the Jewish faith for the population at large. Like, how many worldwide is it? 16 million supposedly. I think 7.5 million live in Tel Aviv, or in Israel, and 7.8 live in the United States, and then whatever populations are scattered in the other European countries and Asia and Africa. I mean, I think it's only like 16 or 17 million worldwide, right? I mean, if something happens to Israel as a result of this egregious overstepping of their government and the commitment to genociding the entire Gaza Strip and annexing not only the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, but all the way to the Egyptian border, like, if that's what they're committed to do, it's going to have significant repercussions for Israel, and it's not viable for the existence or the further existence of an Israeli state. Because I will tell you, the United States will not, and the United States people, the only armed people in the world, will not accept becoming a vassal state with no way out. Like, you will have to kill us before we will bend the knee and you subject us to basically complete Manchurian vassal state rule. It's not going to happen. And the brushback and the pendulum that'll swing is going to be very serious and very significant. And
unovercomable.
yeah, and it's not tenable, like everything that's happening right now. Like the genocide in Palestine is opening the eyes of so many people that were in that 70%, even to the far end of the other direction of that bell curve. Like so many people are looking at it and they're saying this is an ethnic cleansing, indiscriminate killing of men, women, and children. And then you had Candace Owens interviewing the rabbi, and she says to him, yes or no, is the death of Palestinian children sad? And he gave about the worst possible answer that you could give. He said, I weep every day, not just for Israelis, but I weep for what they're forcing us to do. Meaning what they're doing, existing in Gaza, basically, is forcing them to kill women and children indiscriminately. And that was the aha moment that Candace had. And the very next day, you get the tweet from the ADL because they realized they now have to play damage control because this guy has, I don't think he even realized at the time what he said, but everybody had that like instinctual, immediate aha moment where they're like, is that the mindset that influential and you know, emboldened Israelis and Zionists, both here and over there, is that the mindset that they have? Like, I cry out as I strike you. Like,
that's some kind of bullshit right there. I'm sorry.
It made me mad.
You don't say, yeah, I killed a kid and I have no remorse over this. Really, I cry because they made me do that. That is so out of whack. It's not even funny. And, you know, one of the points that I want to bring up here is talking about creating victims within the communities. You know, everybody's a victim. I'm a victim because of this. I'm a victim because of that. I'm disadvantaged because of this or that or whatever. It's nonsense. And when you look at the Holocaust, they've made that into a rallying cry for the Jews. Well, I get it. There were a lot of Jews that died there. But there were also a lot of Christians that died there. There were a lot of gypsies that died there. There were a lot of different groups. Anybody that popped their head up that was a threat to the nation, they were killed. But then you got people like Soros, who was going around to the Jewish homes, who was Jewish, and he was helping to out them. Why did he get to live being a Jew and not exterminated by the rest of the population? So why can't we just call this what it is? The Holocaust was an extermination of anyone who stepped up against this fraction parading as Jews who were not, who all of a sudden made everybody believe, well, you're one of us, so we can't step out against this. And we can't say anything. Because if we do, oh my gosh, God's going to strike us down. No, I'm pretty extra sure he's not going to strike you down for telling the truth. Pretty extra sure in any group. And that goes with all the groups. You know, look at how they made everyone a victim. As soon as they're a victim, can't touch it. Can't call out evil. Can't say anything. Yeah, we can, and we have to. It's our duty. And make the differentiation between the governments, the global crime syndicate, the transnational crime syndicate that has infiltrated everything. Now you pull all of their cover off and laid them bare for all eyes to see and throw them out in the sun to be cleansed of the evil that's within.
Yeah, I think that even a more appropriate term than Zionists at this point, because like I said, Zionists, like there are some Jews who consider themselves Zionists that they believe that to mean the existence and self-determination of the state of Israel as it currently is, which again, nobody has a problem with. But not everybody like in that Zionist community wants to take over the world. There is that faction. So I think a more appropriate term to describe these people is Bolsheviks, because They are Bolshevik revolutionists who've killed 66 million people throughout history. And we go back to the Holocaust, and regardless of whether it was exactly as it was described to us in school, or worse than it was described to us in school, or not at all, not at all like it, one thing that we can all testify to is that we were browbeaten with Holocaust information in the Diary of Anne Frank. And I'm in the Deep South, like Alabama, where we just got like electricity and running water 5 years ago. And we still like learned our Holocaust facts, or what we were, taught they were. And one thing that we never heard about was the Bolshevik Revolution, or Weimar Germany, or the assassination of Nicholas II and his family, or the broad-scale extermination of Christians in Europe by this faction of people that has ties to communism, to the Nazis, to, Stalin, Lenin, Marx. Like, you look at all of these people and they're either Ashkenazi or they're surrounded by Ashkenazis. Mao in China, the CCP, which was set up by Henry Kissinger and the Rothschilds, he was surrounded by these Ashkenazi Jews. And Ashkenazis, like, believe it or not, when you look at the word Ashkenazi and you shorten it, you come up with that word Nazi, which Nazi I don't find anywhere else in historical like verbiage, or in any kind of Latin or Hebrew or whatever. The only place you ever see Nazi is as part of Ashkenazi, when it's not describing these people who were supposedly the very bad guys in World War II. And
I appreciate your correction, by the way. And in the pursuit of being accurate, I think that's a great way to say it, is call them Bolsheviks, and make that be the new common term. I think
it's exactly what they are, because they clearly, like many of the Bolsheviks, if not most of them, are either agnostic or outright atheist. They wear their ethnic supposed Jewishness as a cloak of armor, and they've operated that way, and they've used it as a nepotistic way to create networks across continents and basically gatekeep who they want in power, and excommunicate or make irrelevant anybody that they don't. And they've exercised any means necessary to accomplish their aims, going so far as assassination. And many times, like when we think throughout history about Jewish people getting expelled from certain countries, or from nations or states, most all of the time it's because of these same people, not people that have I have a good faith interpretation of what Zionism means, because I think it means self-determination of Israel. No, it's a complete discard and a disregard of righteousness and commitment to living for God and trying to do right by him. And it's a wholesale power grab and a usury of the controlling of levers of power to basically engage in all kinds of debauchery that led us to what we have with like Sodom and Gomorrah. And it's never one factor. But if you look at I think it was in the 1600s, they were expelled because not just they had taken over the financial system, but they were expelled because they had started kidnapping Christian children and sacrificing them to.
I'll come back on just a minute. Robert said, and I'll have to let John.
Sorry, I got a phone call. My bad.
That's okay. Robert said, please let Jonathan know I sent him a link, on a Facebook link on the Zionist and the NWO. It was put together by Brian M. So
Appreciate it, Robert.
yeah, keep going there. And also, what year was Arizona State infiltrated? I don't know, but McCain set up a human trafficking fund down there that was never used correctly because, in my opinion, I think the evidence supports that John McCain was in the child trafficking networks heavily.
He absolutely was. And so a Rockefeller, I think it was, or I'm sorry, a Rothschild, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild is on the board of directors of the McCain Institute. And there was the scandal, if you guys remember, about 15, 18 years ago, where monies that were donated to the McCain Institute for the express purposes of combating child trafficking were actually instead funneled to the Arizona State University Foundation, where obviously Michael Crow, chairman of InQTel, president of the university, is the biggest spook west of the Mississippi, did whatever they want. And a good chunk of Arizona's revenue comes from, obviously we mentioned fentanyl, but like the cocaine drug trade and the child trafficking trade. I mean, Mark Kelly is the closest thing that we have to John McCain in Arizona right now. He comes from the UN, Rockefeller's like background. He wasn't elected. He is illegitimate. And he also paid K2 Integrity almost as much as he paid Mark Elias to represent him legally. And you wonder why that would be. Probably has something to do with the fact that he wasn't elected. Like nobody voted for any of the top four ticket Democrats that quote unquote ran their elections. They're the most unlikable people that you could probably ever put on a ticket. I doubt that Katie Hobbs was even within a couple 100,000 votes of the duly elected governor, Kari Lake. But Mark Kelly certainly didn't beat Blake Masters, who not only had the Republican support, but he also had the Libertarian candidate withdrew his name from consideration right before the general election and continued to urge his Libertarian voter constituency to vote for Blake Masters. Mark Kelly certainly didn't go 1 against 2 and win. He just happens to have SKD Knickerbocker, who does the comms for the Rockefellers, running his campaign. He just so happens to have K2 Integrity on retainer, doing all kinds of whatever fucking debauchery that they've always done. For people that don't know, just to give context, K2 is one of the two firms that Harvey Weinstein hired to harass his victims when he was first being charged with sexual assault and rape. Black Cube was the other one. One of the most dark side of the moon, like most satanic organizations that you could possibly imagine. That's them. Like, we're not dealing with, upstanding individuals. We're dealing with literal demons. And
they're not even human at this point in time. I don't believe that they're not like us. They don't think like us. They're not even human.
Yeah, everybody that's installed in Arizona is there for a reason. Like, they serve an agenda and a corrupt purpose, whether you're a Ben Toma who comes out of obscurity and in 5 years you're the Speaker of the House in Arizona, even though you were never elected, and it just so happens that you're tied to Frank Timis, who basically owns 30% of the Sierra Leone blood diamond trade. Like, how the hell does that happen? And you look at all of the people attached to Black Mountain, his investment company, and you see spook, 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 spook. And it's like, okay, MI6, CIA, Mossad, it's a who's who of I'm clearly not an upstanding person. Mm-hmm. And so, and Arizona, I would have to argue, is the most corrupt overall state. There are certainly states that have more corruption with regards to just pure politics, but there's also the border situation and the border invasion and the human trafficking and the child trafficking aspect that plays into it that makes Arizona a globally important state for the national security of the United States. And they've certainly embedded their operatives to reflect it.
I think Michigan is right up there too, because there's a lot of stuff here that hasn't even come to the forefront that I know has happened behind the scenes that you never really hear about it unless you know somebody who is deeply within the good guys in the state. And I think that some more of this stuff is going to continue to come out, but Arizona is truly right there in the head, on the spear tip of waking people up and getting to the bottom of these networks. It's incredible. But I don't know if you know this, but there's a place in Michigan called Bay Harbor, and just about every billionaire on the planet has got a home there up by Petoskey. And
is that up near Charlevoix?
Yeah.
I love that area, by the way. I was there a few times when I was living in Chicago.
It's a great area. It's a beautiful area, but it is crawling with globalists, and I mean crawling. And there's other areas in the state that really bad things have happened, and information has been hidden and such. And so I think that we're learning that how vast these networks are, how far they go, and even more is going to come up. And some of us are not going to shut up about it. We're going to continue talking about Nestle's connection to her staffer. We're going to continue to talk about Benson and Benson's connections to, I don't know, where did she go? She went to Taiwan, and she's been all over the place. And her connection with Wayne State University and the money that went there through a couple of developers that set it up so that the World Economic Forum could have the land there. They're all tied in. And once you do start looking into a couple of areas, you can truly see that this is a global crime syndicate, and it is not the people. And so if people get upset about hearing it, realize we don't have any quarrels with people. We have a quarrel with this government that's representing basically themselves, but representing themselves as one of us, and they're not. They're not Christian. They're not Muslim. They're not Jewish. They're not Native American. They're not Black. They're not anything. They're working together, and they have elements of each culture within them so that they can be palatable and nobody questions them. And it's really important. Well, I could keep you on here forever. I really could. Will you come back on again next week? Can we find another time? Because I like the longer interviews, because we always start up and then, we'll get into it. And then it's sort of like, God takes us on a direction, and then all of a sudden it just explodes with information. And I just love that. Would you come on again next week? Can we find another time to have you come on?
Yeah, we can make that work.
I love you. You're amazing. And keep sending me your piano pieces. Do you have any last words for everybody here? And then we're going to say a prayer and then go on to our day, because literally I could sit here for hours and hours and hours, but I think probably everybody out there is needing to have a brain break to process all of this.
Yeah, just I would say pray for the people that are the normies that are on the ground that are putting themselves in harm's way. Actually standing up, you have Stephanie Lambert most recently getting arrested in Michigan, and my thoughts and my support are fully with her and Patrick, and I've told her on a number of occasions that just put me in coach whenever you're ready, like please let me help, and countless others. But there are so many people working behind the scenes that are doing more than anyone can possibly imagine. They'll never get the fanfare or the recognition. If and when we are successful, that'll go to the people whose names you've already heard of. They're there to soak up all of that credit that is 100% due to the efforts of these unsung heroes. And so pray for them. And thank you, Donna, for giving people like me a platform to come and talk about things that you won't hear on mainstream conservative ink media.
Well, you're welcome, and I think I'm so proud to stand with you and anyone who is out there fighting for the truth, and the people that want to hear the truth, that tune into things like this and get themselves educated so that they know what to do and what to, they know what to do. They can start researching this on their own. You don't have to believe us. Look into this stuff for yourself. And I would tell anyone, don't trust us just because we say that we're trustworthy. You need to check this out and find out if what we're saying is true, because this is how we got in this mess to begin with, is we were told to trust everybody, and we walked away from looking into it and started creating these heroes all over the place. And that's how they led us away. If you find that we're trustworthy in what we say, well, that's great. But do your own research to corroborate what we're saying, and anybody out there. Don't let anyone, because it's good practice. It's good practice. And if somebody says something against Jonathan, that doesn't automatically mean you should believe that either, because there's so many people that are spreading disinformation and distractions to lead you away and to do character assassinations on people. They do it all the time. And so just because somebody says it and it feels like new information and that you're in the in group that has the real knowledge doesn't mean it's true. Check it out. Make sure that you've looked into this enough to be able to decipher between who's lying and who's telling the truth. Sometimes it's a little difficult. And at those points in time, we just sit back and go, you know what? I can tell you what is the truth. And I can tell you the truth beyond any and all shadow of a doubt. God Almighty is in charge. And he knows exactly what's going on. This is all going to get kicked out in the light, and it's going to be a bad day for anyone who has attacked his children, his earth, himself, his creation, and the goodness that he put here. It's going to be a bad day. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's going to come out. There's a day. There's going to be a day where all these people will be brought to justice. I pray to God it's within my lifetime, and I pray to God I have an opportunity to be involved in some of this. Nothing would make me happier at this point in time than to bring justice to situations that people have made choices to do bad. And, everybody's been given a chance to turn around. All of them out there that have been breaking the law within the system, you better start singing like a canary right about now and outing those people in your organizations, whether it's Republican, Democrat. It's a cult mentality. It is. You have to look at the facts and the way that it's set up. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever it is, you better start outing out the bad guys in those organizations, because we are not to protect anyone. It's either good or it's evil. You don't hide the evil or you're complicit. And with that said, I think we're going to see some big changes, and I don't think it's too far off. I really don't. The writing on the wall is there. We can check. We know the seasons, but we can count on when the world seems like it's going completely to hell and chaos. That's okay. Let it. We can walk right up through the middle of evil, and 10,000 can fall on one side, 1,000 at the other hand. God will lead us through this, and you don't have to be afraid. And that gives us the courage to run right into the fire and deal with things that need to be dealt with as an adult who is here to protect the flock and the shepherd to God's flock. We look for the lost sheep. And with that said, Jesus said too, and think about it, a good shepherd leaves the flock to go after the one who is lost. We need to be looking for those lost sheep and bring them into the fold and let them know you're important, you're loved. We care about what you say. Your thoughts are every bit as important as anyone else. And we need to listen to each other, because that's how we learn. And just listen with respect, not having to be right. We don't have to be right. Just listen and honor them with listening to them and finding out what's important. And there's always, no matter if it's the craziest thing you ever heard in your life, you're going to find a nugget of truth. We're not listening to make heroes out of people. We're listening, or people we follow with blind faith. We're listening to people for information, to bring things together, to find the best answers, and bring up other leaders that can replace us, so that we're growing them like a good mother or father would. That happens in society just like it happens in our families, with patience, with tolerance, because everybody's at a different level of knowing what's going on and a different level of growth, with patience, with love, with care, moving the sheep out of the harm's way of, say, or let's just say, dealing with the wolves in sheep's clothing in a decisive way with no mercy, because they're sent by Satan himself to kill and destroy. They will not stand. We cannot allow them to stand. And so with that said, I want everybody to feel really encouraged today. You're important. We care. We care what you say. We're not better than you. Nobody's better than you. We're all trying together to work to bring this nation back into a proper jurisdiction, which is under God. So let's say a prayer minute, and hopefully everybody feels blessed by this. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Jonathan. I love him so much as a brother in Christ and a friend, a truth teller, a truth seeker, and someone who has true guts to stand up when he sees things that are wrong and will not back down. He refuses to back down. And what a great example you've given us for everyone to see truth in action from this wonderful, fine person. And we thank you for that. And I ask your favor to rest mightily upon him. Open up all sorts of doors that people can hear his message, that they will get behind the truth that he brings forward, and start telling other people about what we're finding and what we're hearing, and refuse to step down. Give us all courage and strength to do the long game, and whatever it is, to bring this nation back as one nation under God, and help us see each other with your eyes, not as always a threat. Not everybody's a threat. And we know that by following your lead, and that we can open our hearts knowing that there's no real threat here if we're in Christ, if we're in you, if we're following you, because you protect us every step of the way. We don't have to be afraid to talk to people, to find out who they really are, and maybe find out they're on the good side of things, the bad side. Take time to educate them, see if we can talk sense into them, or if they are a true threat, which needs to be removed. We thank you so very much for this wonderful time we've been allowed to be in, to be born here, and to be able to bring just a little bit of your light into this world. And we're thankful that you've given us this opportunity to grow and to also learn our spiritual development to be more like you. You're wonderful, and we love you so very much. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you. Let all the people out here feel discouraged, lost, and alone, that they're never alone, that you're right there by their side, and that they can have comfort in knowing that they turn to you, they ask you, that the answers will be given as you walk us out of this darkness. Thank you so very much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And with that said, everybody, God bless you all. Go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has never, ever not conceded to liars, cheats, and thieves. We're going to write these elections, the 2020 and the 2022 election. We are going to write them. It's just a little patience is required right now, and that's okay. We can be patient because God's in control. So God bless you all. God bless everyone whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. Any last words, Jonathan?
I think you pretty much nailed it, Donna. Thanks for having me. I look forward to the next time.
Next week, be there, be square, everybody. I blew it yesterday, so but with a meeting I went to, but I finally made it there. But be back next week with Jonathan, and follow him for the first news that he's coming out with. Help him get the word out, and repost. This is how it works when we work together. So have a great day, and we'll be talking to you. Let's see, what day is it today? It's Friday, isn't it? Oh man, my week I've just blown. We'll see you Monday. Have a great weekend, and much love to you all.